emails on each end. And so what is the one?
I don't really know because I haven't read the emails, but I just got looped into kind of cleaning up.
Okay, we're going to call this meeting back to order.
I really almost called it.
Before we go back to the applicant or the representative for the applicant, I just wanted to verify whether or not Commission had any questions for anybody that spoke during public comment and offered their testimony. I'll take that as a no. Mr. Buchanan, you have like a lot of time because...
Thank you. Stuart Buchanan, again, my working address is P.O. Box 1545, Titusville, Florida, 32781. I know you've been here a very long time, Commissioners, and so I'm going to be brief. There are a few items that I need to address just for the public record. One of the items is, and I needed to state this just for clarification for future minutes, previously, the county went through what's called the evaluation and appraisal process for the comprehensive plan. We do this every 7 years. Not the current one that you're going through now, adoption, but the prior one was prepared by myself as your comprehensive planner. As part of that, we had to prepare what was called a greenhouse gases map, which showed all the property that had been purchased for conservation. What we found was that 49% of unincorporated Brevard had been taken off the tax rolls and placed into conservation. We deliberately took out federally owned properties. 49% does not include Patrick Air Force Base. It does not include Kennedy Space Center. We took those out because the federal government pays what's called impact. It's part of the Federal Impact Act. So they pay us impact fees in lieu of taxes. If any member of the public would like to verify this, they would simply contact the county GIS section. They can give them all the numbers and the acreage. But just for the record, it does not include job employment centers that are federal properties. The Farmington was discussed. Farmington is 11,000 acres. In many ways, Farmington is misunderstood. Farmington did not receive a single increase in density as part of that process. The Farmington density in Brevard County is what it was for the last 30 years. All we did, we didn't give them one dwelling unit over. We simply clustered it and put 80% under conservation easement. Volusia County is a completely different story. Just so for the residents to have some peace of mind on that, the 11,000 acres in Brevard County did not receive a single extra dwelling unit beyond what the future land use map already allowed. The Volusia County access to the site is actually provided by a Volusia County public road. You all have a letter from Volusia County Public Works in the record. We have already met with Volusia County Public Works, and we have agreed to do whatever improvements they ask us to do to that road. One of the very eloquent speakers talked about the wildlife on and around his house and his lot, which all of us can greatly appreciate. I would encourage the county commissioners to look at the Brevard County Property Appraiser site, tax account 2004953. It is, in fact, a 1.2 acre lot. The P&Z board is made up of appointees from this commission. Many of them are professionals. There's an architect, there's a civil engineer, there is a general contractor. There are professionals in the community that this commission appointed to sit on the P&Z board. One of the things that the P&Z board members were in agreement on is that the runoff from an active citrus grove, the impact to the lagoon, is much higher than single-family residential homes. The runoff from the citrus groves, when they're active, is much higher than single-family residential homes. I would encourage you to look at the minutes from the P&Z meeting where the professionals you appointed sitting on the board had that discussion. The abutting neighbor to this property to the south and the east is in support. You have a letter in your packet. He is the abutting neighbor to both the south and the east. There was talk about the 2007 MIMS small area study. I was not on the county staff at the time. I was hired by a group of MIMS residents who wanted to be taken out of the study. I was successful in getting them removed from the study area. The county commission, and rightfully so, chose to follow their request and so they were in fact taken out of the study. Interestingly enough, from that 2 months later, after I appeared before the Brevard County LPA, I was hired from 2008 to 2015. I prepared all your small area studies. I did several of them for you, including Central Mainland, where we took 14,000 dwelling units off the map with one study. So I'm very familiar with small area studies. If you have any questions about those, I know people have asked about them. I'll be happy to address them for you when I'm finished in just a moment. Board of County Commissioners has had this property, the 16 acres, has been designated on the future land use map as 1 unit per acre for 30 years. It has been on file in Tallahassee for 1 unit per acre on the future land use map for 30 years. It was given AU zoning because at the time that the zoning map was adopted, it was an active citrus grove, as were the surrounding properties. They are no longer active. This property is no longer an active citrus grove. It has not been for years. This rezoning request is only allowed because the future land use map is Res 1. If it wasn't Residential 1, we couldn't come in here and ask you for the rural residential zoning district. RR1 is compatible. It is in fact designed to go under Residential 1. If you were to consult the Comprehensive Plan Land Development Regulations, you would see that in your compatibility matrix. I would ask that the Commission may wish to ask the County Attorney's Office. We agreed at the Planning and Zoning Board to enter into a binding development plan limiting it to 14 lots, 14 units. I believe the BDP is in fact part of this process, that we would have to execute that and honor our commitment from the P&Z meeting. What we're asking to do is to create a 14 lot subdivision for 14 new families and in their own area. As I've stated before, the agricultural use has been defunct for years on this property. And finally, I would encourage you to consult with the County Attorney's Office on any questions you would have concerning what the process would be should the request be denied. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
I have a couple lights on, but I'm not sure if that's for discussion afterwards, or does anybody have any questions for the applicant?
Discussion afterwards.
Okay.
Good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, with that, we'll close the public hearing. Commissioner Pritchett?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have spent a lot of time studying this out, and I am pro-growth, and I'm always looking for new opportunities to bring new housing into the area. But with all that said, the personality of this property up here, it really is rural, and it really is agricultural. And I've been up there a lot, and you guys have a great love for your property and your homes. And I have to say this too, and every person I've met with in the community, they really like you guys a lot. And so I really appreciate the kindness of people you are, and you definitely fit into the Scottsmore area. And I want to say too, as I'm doing this, I'm really proud of my community. You guys have come out very kindly and stated your causes, and I am really blessed to be your commissioner. And I want to thank you for how you brought your opinions tonight. I think you're pretty cool. This property, here's my concern, and I don't know what's been put in there 30 years ago, but trying to get the personality of it now and what's going on around it, it really is agricultural, and there is problems with water. I hear from you guys all the time you're getting a lot of salt in your water, and trying to figure out how to help you guys fix this. I don't know how to do it other than you spending $6,000 right now getting new water systems. And I probably weekly have you guys call me up and fuss about your roads. So you're right on that one, sir. I'm not going to use the word you used. But I think with that and the infrastructure situation in the Scottsmore area, and I know you've got all that going on, but you really do have a wonderful community, and you're wonderful people, and I'm glad you get to live there and enjoy it. Increasing the septic tank 3 to 1, I think is going to be tough also. I think there is a lot of rock out there, and I am concerned about how that would happen. It's just a whole nother world out there in Scottsmore. There's a lot of conservation land, and I think it's there for a reason. So I'm not going to support this tonight, and not that I didn't really spend some time trying to see what's going to work. We really spent the time on this in our office, but I really don't think it's a good fit trying to make this more dense at this time. Who knows, maybe in 20 years, if the growth comes from the north and all the infrastructure is there, I don't know. But right now, I just don't think it's good for this property. I don't think it's good for the lagoon. And I'm really concerned about the water situation up there as it is right now in the Scottsmore area. So, Madam Chair, after we get done with this discussion, I would like to make a motion to deny number 5 and number 6.
And I'll second for discussion as well.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Pritchett, second by Commissioner Lober, and your light is on.
Excuse me, are these going to be separate motions? One for the
I
council
believe
and...
Okay,
And the second will stand.
okay,
A few thoughts, if I may.
okay.
So first off, I think everyone, including the applicant, did a great job in terms of making their positions known. Only thing I don't like, and I think I pointed this out every single time it's come up with any item, are these threats of litigation. Doesn't really win me over. So the veiled threat of what would happen if the application's denied, I'm not concerned about that. I'm concerned more about what lawful criteria we have to evaluate in determining whether or not to grant or to deny a particular application. And I can't tell you how thankful I am that our D1 commissioner has the position she has, because this was one that was troubling me. I have, with one exception that comes to mind, I believe always with respect to a rezoning, deferred to the commissioner in whose district the project's fallen. I was really worried because this is one I was pretty strongly opposed to based on everything I've heard at the outset. I was really worried if the D1 commissioner was in favor of this, I might have to break that tradition of going along with what folks know based on their expertise living and working in a particular district. I'm thankful that's not the case. When I was looking at this, and bear with me if any of this is repetitious, the items that I'm concerned about in evaluating this, apart from what the individual district's commissioner thinks, are the actual administrative policies that we're supposed to and we ought to follow in determining whether to grant or deny something like this. So Laura Lee Thompson touched on some of these. I'm going to touch on some that she mentioned on and some others as well. But our administrative policies dealing with future land use, Policy 3 talks about the compatibility of existing or proposed land use, and the pertinent part, sub C on that, talks about whether the proposed use or uses is or are consistent with an emerging or existing pattern of surrounding development. And I think it's simply just not. As far as Admin Policy 4, which is out of the same set of paperwork and out of the same document, it talks about the character of a neighborhood. It says the character of a neighborhood or area shall be a factor for consideration whenever a rezoning or any application involving a specific proposed use is reviewed. The character of the area must not be materially or adversely affected by the proposed rezoning or land use application. I don't think it fits with that. Admin Policy 5, the pertinent parts, there are 3 out of a slew of quite a few more, talks about whether the physical qualities of the existing road system that will serve the proposed use or uses is sufficient to support the use or uses without significant deterioration. It talks about whether the surrounding existing road system is of sufficient width and construction quality to serve the proposed use or uses without the need for substantial public improvements. And it talks about whether the surrounding existing road system is of such width and construction quality that the proposed use or uses would realistically pose a potential for material danger to public safety in the surrounding area. And I know we've heard that the nearest road has been made of, or is made of millings, and that the pavement condition is somewhat poor. And I know I've heard it before, and I heard it again today, that 2 cars can't drive past one another without one having to pull over. So I have concerns with respect to that admin policy as well, at least the pertinent parts that I just mentioned. Admin Policy 7 talks about having significant adverse and unmitigatable impact on nearby water bodies. It talks about significant natural wetlands, water bodies, or habitat for listed species. I've got concerns with respect to that as well. And I believe Laura Lee may have touched on this as well, but we also have factors to consider with respect to a rezoning request. They're set out in our municipal code or our county code, section 62-1151 sub C. Some of the items that are pertinent, at least in my view, are the character of the land use of the property surrounding the property being considered. It's rural. There's really no Res 1 anywhere nearby, and in fact, the applicant mentioned to go to the property appraiser and plug in 2004-953 to find one that was under Res 2.5, and even that's not a Res 1. It's well over 1 acre, it looks like, at least for this particular parcel, and my quick review of that. Going on, it talks about, in the same document, factors to consider for rezoning requests pursuant to that 62-1151 sub C. Talks about the impact of the proposed zoning classification on water and sewer systems. There are none. That's a problem. The other thing that occurred and that was mentioned today was the potential of having salt intrusion, at least it was alluded to in the wells, with some of the wells, at least one of the test wells, testing over the EPA suggested safe drinking limits. That's a concern to me, that if we're going to continue to wick that down, that we're going to go even beyond where that's at this point. I'm also concerned, and it was mentioned previously, I don't know that it came up in this meeting, about wells maybe even running dry, depending on how much development occurs in that area. Another item that's in that set of factors to consider out of 62-1151 talks about the compatibility with existing land use plans. It just doesn't seem to fit it. So for those reasons, and thankfully because the District 1 Commissioner has the position she has, I'm happy to second this. And, you know, I don't begrudge the applicant by any means for trying to do this. I think it's, you know, it's something that everyone has to make an individual decision. The gentleman that said that he would love him, you know, if he didn't have this request, you may want to love him anyway. I mean, it doesn't seem to be a malicious request, but I just don't see it as being compatible.
Okay, since Commissioner Smith can't press his light, did you have anything you wanted to add, Commissioner Smith?
No, excuse me, I pretty much agree with everything that the two commissioners that have spoken already.
Commissioner Tobias? Good. And without sounding like a broken record, it was something that, you know, it weighed heavy on me as well. And if everything around it was smaller than 2.5 acres, it may be something I look hard at. But again, you know, of course, Mr. Lober said it a little more eloquently than me, but the main issue is compatibility, and it's not compatible with the surrounding area. And the lack of utilities and the lack of infrastructure, the infrastructure barely supports the few people that it has now. I mean, I hear about that road, and it's a joke how you have to pull over. You really do have to pull over. I mean, it's if you have a big vehicle and you're trying to drive down that road. So I don't think it's compatible. I don't think the infrastructure is there for this kind of development. I would encourage you to look at the 2.5 acres. I think that is the reasonable compromise, because most properties in that area are much larger than that. So I won't be supporting this tonight either.
Call the question?
Yep. Do we need separate motions? Okay, so do you want to restate?
I make a motion to deny item H5.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Pritchett for denial, second by Commissioner Lober. All those in favor of denial say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion is denied unanimously.
I make a motion to deny item H6.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Pritchett, second by Commissioner Lober for denial. All those in favor of denial say aye.
Aye.
Do you
Any-
want to request the county attorney's office to bring back findings of fact on the rezoning denial?
I would love that.
Sure, that would be great. Do we have to modify the motion, or do you want
Just make a motion to direct us to do it,
So
and we'll
moved.
bring it back.
to? Okay,
Just need a
all
second.
right. Motion by Commissioner Lober, second by Commissioner Pritchett. Did I get that right?
We'll share it.
Okay. All those in favor to have the county attorney to bring us back findings, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
May I make one more, ma'am?
Oh, one more motion.
I would like to make a motion to be able to do a small area study in Scottsmore and do it in-house like we're doing with Port St. John, and that way it'd be staff time. And I like what we're doing in the Port St. John area. We're letting the citizens of Port St. John come with some, be on a board. We're starting to form with that. So I would like to make that motion to be able to maybe start working on that as you guys have some time opening up, which we're going to be fine for a while now because we worked through this item, but that's something I would like to do.
Commissioner Tobias?
Can I ask staff how much this is going to cost? What's the time frame? Or can we bring it up for discussion later before we have some pertinent facts and we go ahead and we obligate staff on a whim to create a study that may not be needed? So can I get that premise before we, I guess, vote on this?
Sure.
You know, best case scenario, we're looking at 9 to 12 months with a small area study. Some of the factors in Scottsmore that the planning staff is not necessarily well-versed in are things like drinking water quality. It's the purview of other state agencies, and we do not have the in-house staff to do that analysis. We can conduct the coordination with those agencies and host the conversation, but those are not things that we can evaluate ourselves. So there's some factors here, environmental factors, that we'll need to do some due diligence with those respective agencies, and I'm not sure how long that takes to do. Many of our other studies haven't dug that far into those factors, and I feel like that's a very relevant concern in this area that's unique, that I've not managed a project with that purview in the past. So that could lengthen the time, and I'm not sure what resources we would need to do that. But I can address some of the inconsistencies between the zoning and the comp plan that Mr. Barcher brought up at the beginning. You know, when the comp plan came to town in 1988, there were zonings on properties already, and if those properties have continued with that zoning and that use, we don't deploy the comp plan and then change the zoning classification, because that would be a taking of rights. So when the comp plan was put into place, there's a policy for pre-existing uses, and there's a policy of not changing the zoning until the use changes over time. And so those uses that are out there that have an inconsistent zoning with the future land use designation are because they existed long before the comp plan did. So those things are not going to be affected by a study, because that would be we would have to buy those properties. So there's a concern I have about the change we can affect. It's definitely in the rural areas. The Res 1 could be cleaned up, and that's the tool to do that. So we can't change the Res 1 without a small area study. That's the mechanism to get there. But we'll have to get some other agencies involved.
Thank you. Cost. I'm sorry. Do you have any idea on?
If I may, I think that, I don't know that we're going to be able to identify what the cost is. What I would ask, with the board's permission, is maybe at the next zoning meeting, we come back with an estimate, and we pick this topic up at that point, if you all are gracious enough to allow us to do that. And then we would be able to have, I think we'd be able to better answer the question and have an opportunity to evaluate some of the concerns that we heard here tonight, and then look at what we would have in-house expertise for and what we wouldn't have, or where we'd have to collaborate with other agencies, state agencies like the health department and stuff like that.
Thank you. And one more follow-up, Madam
Sure.
Chair. Yeah, for the benefit of the new board member, as well as all the people that took time out of their schedule here and are hanging their hats on a small area study, Tad, can you, or Aaron, I know you did all the work, or a bulk of the work under Tad's direction, I apologize, for the small area study that happened in Merritt Island. Can you inform us the direction the board took when it came to the small area study that Merritt Island residents worked tirelessly, as well as staff did, for 3 years, and made numerous recommendations? What was the, remind us for the Scottsmore folks out here, what action did the board take on any of the recommendations?
I think the commission directed staff to pursue the first step in implementing those recommendations, which was to pursue the drainage model, and then they directed in their motion to include 2 additional recommendations for eventually a land use change if that were necessitated. But it wasn't a direction to do the land use density reduction. It was a direction to bring it up again when the evaluation of the drainage model was complete. So we have kind of a series of steps that study resulted in, which will take place over the next several years and come back to you several times, I'm sure.
Okay, thank you. Density was not, let's short yes or no, has density changed because of that study?
Not yet, but we received direction to address it again when more information comes forward.
Commissioner Pritchett?
The thought I have on this, and I know we all have this serious in our communities, but I really only have one city in all of District 1. The rest of them are unincorporated. There's a little tiny bit of cocoa I think I share with Commissioner Lover and Commissioner Smith, but most of you guys are out there on your own. You're just county property, and I can't ask for a large area study of the whole county that's unincorporated. But when you have a community that's obviously almost like a little unincorporated city, like Port St. John or Scottsmore, I mean, you can't do it your own unless you go and incorporate it, and we don't want that. So I think this is fair to you of getting some kind of continuity of what's going on in your lives and in your development, and since you own almost all the property out there. So that's my reason for asking for this, because if they were a city, of course, they'd have an idea of what they want to be and what they want to stay. So in all fairness, we're all you got. So we have to help you get some kind of parameters together of what it is you want in your community. Even though you're not incorporated, you really are a community. And so that's why I think this is imperative. I don't know how much detail we can get into it. And like you said, with the water quality, that's different because you have a whole nother issue there. But there's certainly things we can address in a small area study. And that's getting together maybe these issues we have with some zoning and some of those things in the area, and some places that just shouldn't be built out there at all because of the hard rocky areas. So again, you know, Tad, I would be very comfortable waiting for you guys to come back with that. But I think as far as this community, I think we should do this for them because we are all they have, and I think this is an important thing for Scottsmore. So again, I'd like to make a motion to have the staff come back with some parameters on a small area study, but I really like to do one for this area.
I'll second that.
Thank you, sir.
Second by Commissioner Pritchett. Second by Commissioner Lober.
We'll share.
Yeah. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
That takes care of mine, too.
Okay. We'll give you guys a few minutes to leave if you want to. You're welcome to stay for H7, but
It'll be fun.
Yeah, she only got a quarter. I wonder, is Washington a no-fault state?
I think it is. I think it's me. Thank you guys. My friend getting divorced there, 50-50.
Oh.
So he must have done something. Must be protected somehow. Where she said, that's good enough.
I don't know the
Get money
difference
outta
between
here.
35 and 70 billion.
I don't either.
I don't.
I mean, okay, that's enough.
In fairness, I think the question, it was an information question. What happened
That's
next?
not what I took it to be. I heard it the first time, I didn't like it. I heard it the second time, and that thing goaded me to respond.
You think so?
Yes. I'm thoroughly convinced.
Really?
Yes. Implicit, veiled, yes.
I think
Yes.
you read it.
No, I know, not on that one.
Well, some people are nicer about it than others.
I don't like when that's done. No, I don't like that.
I think the only person who has there's attorney in public.
Yeah, they're really honest.
And it picked it up.
Oh, no.
I have a great relationship.
You're like, Smith, I'm afraid I'll pick something.
Thank you guys. Thank you.
I start talking
They're the sweetest people. They're so sweet.
I'll tell you as well with respect to that, it was wild and among those. And even had you had that in there, quite frankly, I don't want you to think it was the tip of a
These
needle.
parents bring their kids to here. They're going to turn their kids off government. You know, they're totally jading their kids.
It's kind of like science.
Thank you so much, sir.
Torture the kids. They won't like science. They won't like government.
They behave so well, too.
I know. They did. They were really good kids.
Yes, they were better than me.
So much fun.
Oh, I gotta give this to the clerk.
Yeah.
I think when people clap, we did bad.
Yeah, he doesn't want to be too loud.
Yes. I get
Here we go.
uncomfortable.
I hear they're running up to hug you after this.
All right, I want to thank the individuals with H7 for being so patient. And I'll defer to staff.
Yeah, this item is a proposal by Clark and Patricia Sims requesting a change of zoning classification from RU19 to RU24 on a property .93 acres in size located on the west side of Tropical Trail. You guys have seen this one before, and you asked the applicants to come back with a concept plan, which is in your package.
Okay, the applicant?
Yeah, let's hear the applicant first. It's just for after.
Still in awe of the last item.
I was just looking for your cards.
Hi, I'm Clark Sims. I
We
live
should have
at-
bumped you guys ahead, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Couldn't possibly have known.
I really didn't.
I needed, I don't really need to eat. My name is Clark Sims. I live at 1201 North Tropical Trails. My wife Patty with us. Obviously, we're proposing to change our zoning designation from RU19 to RU24 to be more in line with our Res 4 future land use designation. I'm not sure if it takes much more than that, but I think it looks like a pretty simple thing to discuss and look at here for the commission. The area surrounding it is not anything like Scottsmore. And, you know, from this point, it is definitely, from any view, well within what I would say the classification of Res 4. That would put it, what do we call it, the best designation, actually.
Yeah, considering the size of our property,
Yeah.
the dimensions. I
Anything
mean,
to add?
we've already beat this horse to death, so. I mean,
Okay.
really,
Well,
no
we'll just reserve the rest of your time.
Yeah, we can,
Let's do that.
we can reserve the rest of your time if you want to speak after these cards. Okay.
All right, thank you.
John Masson, and then Leanna Walters.
Oh, actually, I have a couple disclosures on this. I apologize.
That's okay.
If I can get those in real quick, I apologize, guys. On March 20th, I met with Susan and Lindsay Johnson, who were concerned about the proposal. Then on March 23rd, I received an email from Bill Hank, who was concerned about the proposal as well. And there may have been additional disclosures at the prior meeting pertaining to this when it came up then.
Okay. Name and address, please.
John Mason, 530 Timuquana Drive.
Okay.
I'm Leanna Walters, also at 530 Timuquana Drive. We'll just take our time together.
How are you doing tonight?
It's been a long one.
Yes, for sure. Goodness, where to begin? We've been here several times to oppose this applicant's request. It's our understanding they want to use the additional houses to provide a place for their aging parents, family members that's in need. So for that, it seems like it's a need that's in the moment, but it is a need for them in the moment that's going to impact our neighborhood always. Inevitably, these properties, these houses will become rentals. It's just where it's headed one day. From what I've seen in the paperwork, they're asking to add 3 houses with at least 9 total bedrooms. I've seen and experienced a lot in my 25 years of professional experience in the multifamily industry. That's my background. So even if these applicants' requests were being made in another part of the neighborhood that didn't impact me directly, I would still have 2 major concerns. The approval of this rezoning would allow just one owner the autonomy to select the occupants of the proposed houses. Then the screening of qualified renters or the lack of screening of qualified renters can greatly change a property overnight. A lot of owners go into a project like this with full intentions of maintaining or possibly improving their property, but then circumstances of wealth, health, lack of desire, whatever, will delay or even totally prohibit the intentions. We are truly concerned about the addition of these houses. It'll just be too much burden for one owner. There's just so many properties already in that area run down. I'll let you speak, you've got more.
Yeah. Well, I just want to keep it simple. It's just my concern is the unknown. You want to, we had the first planning and zoning meeting. We talked about it. We kind of came to a gentleman's agreement for one house, and we're all okay with that. Then the next meeting, all of a sudden, it's three, possible duplexes, triplexes, whatever it was, and it, to me is, I thought we agreed on something. I thought we were clear about something, and, and it wasn't what we wanted, but, we don't want to, have ill feels towards our neighbors. We want to be transparent, we want to be open, and we want to understand where they're going with this. But my concern is, in order to put that many houses on that canal, you're going to have to build a seawall, you're going to have to build these houses. It's going to be $700,000 by the time you're done. It doesn't make sense. I don't believe with the canal, if you actually did the actual measurements, that there's enough room to put that many houses there. And if there is, and if it does turn into rentals at some point, these renters are going to park on those septic tanks. It's just going to happen. So the do no harm, the transparency, and the character of the neighborhood are all at stake here. And, I don't want to speak badly towards the Sims. I don't know them, but my concern is what happens in the future. I don't know. We haven't really talked that much. We've talked with our other neighbors, and we have a lot of great neighbors in that neighborhood, but my concern is what happens in the future. What is this, the character of the neighborhood? What's going to happen? So that's my concern.
I do have a question. I don't know if I'm allowed to ask or not, but if this zoning is reclassified, my understanding of it would then mean there would be 5 houses on that one property, because if the main house, they're allowed a guest house already, and they're asking for 3 more houses. So would that make 5 homes, 5 houses would be allowed on the property if this gets rezoned?
Aaron? Yes.
We wouldn't perceive the guest house as a second house.
Okay.
But there would be allowed to be a guest house in that, if you perceive it as 5, yes.
So we're looking at 12 or 15 cars?
Yeah, part of, sorry.
Commissioner Wilbur?
Say we could bounce that again to Aaron.
I just look at concurrency. There's an average of 2.5 people per house, and they make an average of 10 trips a day.
Those half people are very hard to quantify.
I had another question, and I don't know, just kind of throw it out there. I don't necessarily need it answered. But on the buildable part of the property, like part of the acreage that they're counting on this is part of the canal. So it's not buildable on top of that canal. So I don't know if when you're considering to allow 3 houses in that area, if that's considered or not. So just wanted to.
We'll check.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
throw that.
To add to that, you've got what is proposed as .93 acres. If you cut away where the canal is and you cut the setbacks, you only have about a ½ acre of buildable space, really, when it really cuts down to it. And then that canal right now is just a dirt canal that has no support. If you're going to put a house there, you're going to have to build a seawall. So that's a 400-foot seawall to go in there. And what is the economic impact on that, or the, for that property to maintain and that sort of thing? You got anything else?
That's all. I think
that's about it.
That's all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Three more.
Yeah. So you were Leanne, correct? Okay. Susan and Lindsay Johnson?
Hi. My husband is here, but he's just going to stay in the back, and I'll be speaking this evening. My name is Susan Johnson. I live at 520 Timuquana Drive, directly across the property, across the canal from the proposed change. And I do have a pretty little picture that I just put this over here.
Sure.
Is it still going? Pause you here.
He's coming. Okay.
I paused your time while he's getting that fixed.
Okay, that's fine. Oh, okay, thanks. Let's see. Okay. I didn't expect to be able to be here tonight, but due to the software meltdown that the airline industry had on Monday, I am here tonight, so I'm very excited about that chance. I've lived in this house since 2004, and in that time we have developed a very nice neighborhood. We've got really good neighbors. We take care of each other, much like we have up in Scottsmore. We really do look out for each other, and we've always gotten along well with Clark and Patty, and in fact, we hosted a barbecue at our house the night before the initial meeting back in January so that we could have an opportunity to hear from them what it was that they chose, that they were proposing to do. And at that time, they started talking about how they wanted to take care of their elderly parents. And over the course of the last couple of months, it's evolved from elderly parents to including a sister. My own mother lived to be 100. She just passed away about a year ago. I understand the concerns that people have with regard to taking care of elderly parents. But sad to say, and I don't mean to be rude about it, they die. They go away. And at some point in time, these 3 properties that they are looking to develop are still going to be there, and because of the nature of the property, it's all going to be one property. So they have the house down on the river, and then there's these 3 houses here. My understanding is that based on the fact that they're not doing a flag lot nature, it would always be one parcel. Therefore, one person is going to be owning 4 homes and a potential guest house on one property. That says rental right there to me, that there's no choice. In the future, these will be rental properties. And this is the site map that was provided, and you'll notice that there's a pink. That is the actual canal itself, and you'll see that the southern property line falls within the canal. And what I've done is I've identified at various setback locations, taking into consideration that you have to have the setback from the front of the property. I've drawn a line from 15, 30, 45, and 60 and shown what the dimension is based on the canal here as shown on the site map and how that impacts the actual width available to the property. And you'll notice that the first 3 ones closest to Tropical Trail going west, that at this point in time, there's only 92.5 actual feet of land when you take back what you need for the septic and the proposed driveway along the northern perimeter. There's only 9.5 feet left for the drain field, and the drain field, my understanding, has to have the 2 4-foot shoulders, and they're proposing a 5 by 70 drain field, I believe. And then when you look, you'll see that the property gets narrower as the canal gets wider as it goes along towards the west to where they want to do it. So from a logistical standpoint, I just don't see how they can even build a house, let alone 3 houses there. It is a little bit concerning that if we go from 2 to 4, I don't know, does that mean that they can do 2 to 4 single houses, or is that 2 to 4 duplexes? So these are some questions that I have with regard to that as well. And thank you for the time.
Thank you. All right. That's all the cards. Did you want to come back up and rebut?
Get 14 minutes.
Okay, just wanted to see what the problems were now. First thing, we have 6 children, 4 early adult children who will, about 3 in significant relationships, probably hopefully going to have grandbabies soon. The 3 houses will always be occupied by family. We have tons of family. That's why we have a big piece of property. You know, I mean, we're not your single child family. We have 3 bedrooms in our house. When they come home, we just have to stack people. So it will be really nice as the kids have families, and inevitably our parents will pass away, but the houses can go to some really good use, hopefully, like I said, for grandchildren. As far as the concern that they would become rentals, let's take that trail for just a second. My family has been in real estate for 55 years in Brevard County. My mother is Sally Gould. She's owned Marketplace Realty. I think she knows almost everyone. And she just recently sold her major rental properties because she's over it. Not really excited about rental properties, but how to manage them and how to vet potential renters is certainly something that we cut our teeth on in our family. So that should never be a problem or a concern. There's no way we would want someone to hurt any property we have. That being said, I just wanted to answer your concerns that we know what we're doing if it ever became a rental, which we have no intention of renting it. Okay, second thing, more important, septic, sewer. Save the Indian River Lagoon project. I did call today. I spoke with Anthony Grueller. I also spoke with Don Keene, Don's utilities engineer. He put me in touch with Anthony. We do fall in an area where we can actually apply for funds to change out the septic to sewer. If we put new homes there, we also fall in an area where they're going to require us to connect to the sewer. So the septic setbacks are no longer even a consideration because they're not something we can do. I mean, they explained the whole process to me, but nevertheless, the bottom line is we won't be using septic tanks. And that is the information I got actually today. And it has to do with something new that just passed, but he hadn't updated the application. He sent me the information. Anthony did, sent me the application, and told me that right now, if we were to do something tomorrow, say, that we would have to connect to the manhole that was on Ormond Avenue, which is diagonally across the street at the subdivision, the subdivision where it connects with North Tropical Trail. He gave me an estimate on that cost from my home, which is on the river, which isn't even part of it, as about a minimum of $60,000. And I said, no, let's talk about the front of the property. And he said, maybe 25, 30, and, barring any unforeseen anythings. So we're already aware that there's a cost. We're already aware that we have to put it on sewer. And actually, that's a good thing because I don't have any desire to deal with more septic issues. So as far as environmental impact, I don't see that as a problem. My mom only has one car, and Clark's parents have two, so that's 3 more cars. It's our driveway. It shouldn't impact anybody.
I think the other thing to note is there's 13 houses on the other side of the canal,
On their street.
on their street that border our property. We have one house, and even if we had 4 houses, that wouldn't even come close to what is there now, right on the other side of that canal.
So basically, the character isn't disturbed, the future land use is met. We have solved the sewage problem. The reason for the RU 2 to 4 is because of the size of the property, and we really only want to use a driveway. We know that there's going to be all kinds of things we have to do. We have to get a site plan if we do more than 3 units.
Or do 3, you can't.
Do 3.
Can't do more than
No,
3.
if we do 3 units, I met with P&Z, and they said you have to do a site plan if you do 3 units, or more than 2, I think it is. And so we'd have to do that anyway, and we have to go by what they say. I mean, the engineers, all the different agencies, this is just the first step
And they
for us to be able to do anything.
And they have to be single-family type homes. They cannot be apartment buildings or duplexes or that kind of, we already know that.
I mean, that's been all our meetings we met with.
I'll just interject on that. They don't have to be until you do a binding development plan, which is self-perpetuated. So if you're agreeing to that, there's an additional document that would necessitate that. It would also take a signature by your mortgage company.
To do the BDA? I mean, binding
The
development
joinder
agreement?
is a limitation on your property rights, and some folks don't have that conversation with their lender before
Gotcha.
so if you agree to those conditions, they need to sign that document before it comes back on consent.
Can you put a stipulation that they'll be single-family type homes without even a binding development? I mean, we'll stipulate to it right now. We have no intention.
We're going to need to have a binding development plan to make
Okay,
that
that's the only way to do
restriction.
it. Okay,
Thanks.
all right, that's us. You got any more?
No.
Do you
Thank
have
you.
questions for them or anything?
Questions for staff?
Okay. You have questions, Rita?
For staff.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, Commissioner Lober?
Okay, where to begin on this one? I'll throw this first one. Actually, before I get to that, let me ask, and I'll start with Mr. Denningoff, and if he wants to field it to someone else, then we'll go with it that way. In terms of having a requirement to connect to sewer at present, are you aware of whether they were to build today, assuming everything were magically in place and they had all their I's dotted and T's crossed, would they have to connect to sewer as they've indicated? Because I truly don't know.
Frankly, I would have to double-check something on that to be certain. I can tell you that if there was gravity sewer in front of their property, they would have to connect to it. The state would not issue a permit for a septic system when gravity sewer is available for a residential property. If it's considered a commercial property, then there's a distance limitation or requirement. If it exceeds a certain distance, then the commercial property could use a septic system. If it's within that distance to the sewer system, then they would have to build a force main or gravity sewer extension system to connect in. There is sewer that is on Ormond Avenue. I do know that, and so that as a residential property, single family, I think it would not be required to connect to the sewer. As I understand the application of that rule, but if we do consider it commercial, then it could be required to connect. So, Mr. Dugan or Mr. Keene, I'd be interested to understand their interpretation of the rules which would apply in this particular case.
But to the best of your understanding, unless it's considered commercial at present, as of this moment, they would not necessarily have to connect, or they would not have to connect?
That would be consistent with my understanding. That's correct.
Okay, I appreciate that. Now, I'll bounce the next couple to Aaron, and again, you're free to lob them to someone else if you so choose. Have you been able to evaluate whether the documents, or I'm sorry, the sketches that have been supplied and the proposals that have been supplied would be adequate to meet all the criteria for this to move forward?
Not with the level of detail that we have. They're not engineered plans, and there's certainly a whole site plan approval process that we would need to go through to review those details.
And let me ask you, because I know the applicants had mentioned that they thought if you have more than 2 or 3 houses on a particular parcel, that a site plan would be required. Is that more than 1 house or 2 houses? What's the magic number there, 1?
The magic number is more than one single-family residence on a property necessitates a site plan. And to clarify, they have one single-family residence now. So even one more would need a site plan, although that's kind of unusual to do a site plan, but that's the site plan code.
And that would be exclusive of a guest house?
Right.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm on board with everything here. Have they had the ability to come through and do a pre-application meeting with you all? And if so, have they availed themselves of that particular opportunity?
They have not come through for a pre-application meeting, mainly because that necessitates engineering drawings, which are very, very costly, of course. But they have met with the planning and zoning staff several times. We jokingly refer to it as a free app, where they just get the same appropriate people in the room. It's just that staff doesn't have the same level of detail to perform a review.
And let me ask you, are you aware, and if you're not, just let me know, that's fine, if they could have or could subdivide the property and create flag lots to accomplish putting, let's just say for the sake of argument, 3 additional structures, 3 additional houses in there?
Yes, we measured the dimensions necessitated for flag lots. They require 1 acre on the body of the lot, excluding the flag stem, and they have almost 3 acres now. So we believe, without, really engineering it out, and the canal, of course, eats into this, but they could create 2 flag lots in a parcel with frontage along Tropical. They would need a variance to .45 feet for...
0.45
Right,
feet?
which would...
So less than 6 inches?
Right.
Okay.
But they would still have to go through the Board of Adjustment because they have 99.65 feet of frontage, and, the flag stems would be 25 feet each, and then they would need 50 feet for the single-family zoning minimum lot size.
Have you run that option by the applicant?
Yes, we met with them and presented that as an alternative solution for a single-family product.
When you say that you presented that to them, was that a verbal presentation, or do you have a sketch, or what level of complexity was involved in that discussion?
We drew it with markers on the board with, it wasn't engineered plans, but...
But it was enough in your estimation from having been there and having been
There were
involved in the
dimensions
conversation?
involved,
It was at least understandable?
I think so.
Okay, nothing suggests to you to the contrary, or?
No, but certainly you should ask the applicants if they understood.
Okay, no, I'm trying to get a better understanding, and then I may bounce some questions to them as well. With respect to using multifamily zoning as a vehicle to get single-family housing, have you been able to ascertain why the request is being done in this manner as opposed to availing themselves of potentially requesting a variance of 5-point-some-odd inches and doing flag lots?
I believe the proposal is because they cannot split their lot, and you can't build more than one single-family house on a lot in single-family zoning. In multifamily zoning, you can.
Why can't we split the lot, or why can't they split the lot?
I'd like you to ask the applicants that if you don't mind.
Okay, could I ask y'all, if you want to come up, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, when I talked with George, I believe it was, the first time I went down.
Yes, sir.
And we went there with the idea of putting in a flag lot. We thought that was the only option. After speaking with him, the only issue we have is, again, the width, and I don't believe it was 6 inches. There was an issue with having a second driveway. So there was quite a issue with that, whereas keeping this all one property.
Well, let me back you up. I apologize for interjecting.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I'm following before I
Yeah,
lose track.
sure.
It's been a long meeting so far, but in terms of the issue with respect to the driveway, was it a spacing issue, or was it a code issue, or what kind of?
Yeah, I believe it's spacing.
And that's to have 3 flag lots? Or, I'm sorry, 2 flag lots and then the parcel that
Correct.
fronts?
Yeah, there's just doesn't have the width for it, not even close.
Because you'd have to have a
I
road.
understood. Right.
You have to have a road so that those lots have access, right? Aren't I correct?
Your driveway could be on one of the flag stems, and the other flag stem could use the same driveway. It would just need to be, the lot would need to be split and designed, but you could share a driveway and give easements to one another, I suppose. Is that accurate?
That wasn't.
And Aaron?
Another issue. There's
Yeah.
another issue that's even more important.
Sure.
We have a mortgage on our house.
You gotta
It's
talk
the
in
whole
the mic.
property. I'm
Please.
sorry.
Yes,
The mortgage company would require us to pay off the entire mortgage in order to split it. They're not really interested in us splitting the property and then them splitting the mortgage. I mean, it's just a financial impossibility, actually, right now.
And I don't mean to
No, I understand.
to be
I'm just letting you
callous
know
at all,
that was
but
just-
I've got to ask, because I'm just too curious not to ask. Thus far, what I've heard that's unrebutted, and if you have evidence to the contrary, to the contrary, let me know. We've heard that a 400-foot seawall might be required, and that might run $700,000 or more.
Well, there's no seawall there now. I mean, I don't know why it would be required. It would be required if I were going to build right on the,
I just don't know how tight the
Would
property.
it be required at all?
no,
Yeah,
there's
let me-
plenty,
From- we
there's
don't-
plenty of
we've never
space
heard anything
without a
to that.
septic.
We've
As
never
long as we
heard
don't have to
anything
do
about
septic.
creating a
if
seawall
there-
for any reason.
If there is septic,
on a
on the other
drainage
hand, would there be ample space, or would you potentially have to put a seawall in? Because it just seems that there's so many variables that aren't defined yet.
No, after talking to septic, one of the things they mentioned to me was there was no issue. It was just the type of septic system you would be required to use.
And
I
again,
think a lot of this is going to get hammered out in
Yeah,
the
I
site
mean,
plan
that's-
stuff. I'm not
that's-
saying that.
Sure.
I'm
That's
not
for the
saying-
experts of planning and zoning to decide.
Yeah.
I mean,
We're just supposed to
just
figure out.
my own
Sure.
If
2
this
cents.
is in congruence with,
I mean, the small details, I mean, if it doesn't work with the site plan, it's not going to move. And I understand why you don't do the engineering and go through
Valid
the
point.
task, because it's
Right,
a
I
pretty
don't
big
begrudge you for that
expense
at
if
all.
we're not going
Yeah,
to
I
approve
don't
it.
begrudge you for that at all.
And my question is,
Right.
is it better to take that property and put a whole bunch of driveway and concrete down as opposed to sharing as much driveway as you can? I'd rather see a lot with, if you're asking me, than have it split up and then trying to do a flag. That's kind of a,
Well,
it's got beautiful oaks on it. It's a nice, beautiful piece of property.
Well, let me ask, and this is again for Aaron, would they, if they went about going the flag route, or flag lot route, would they have to have more driveways? Or, because what I understood from what you said is they could get an easement from one of the lots, share that with the other lot, and then use the same driveway, so you're not just pouring concrete and making soil impermeable for no good reason.
Yeah, in order to do the 2 flag lots, they would still have to do a minor subdivision, and with a minor subdivision, they could create a cross-access easement across the flag stem and center the driveway or put the driveway within that area.
So it wouldn't require additional driveways over what they'd have to put in to get access if we just approve this as is, or would it?
They could work it out to where they could just have the one driveway access.
Okay. Yeah, because I don't want to, I mean, again, just hypothetically, assuming we wanted to let them put the houses up and we didn't have an issue with the density.
Yeah, they would have
There's
to
no point
provide-
making them put 6 driveways or 2 driveways or 3 driveways in. That's
Yeah, they
that's
could
just not fair.
provide easements across each other's lots so that they could just have the one driveway.
Okay, and let me ask, and I'll just kind of bounce it to whoever wants to take this one. I've got so many questions on this. In terms of the nearest multifamily, is there any multifamily at all that's west of North Tropical Trail in that area?
No.
Is there any?
West of North Tropical Trail?
There's some
close?
east of North Tropical Trail and does not directly access North Tropical Trail. It's off of the street to the south, and I can
Okay.
measure it for you.
And it's
Okay.
the other way, there's condominiums on the west side of North Tropical Trail.
Yeah, I
Down
just,
towards 520, there are. If you drive down North Tropical Trail, there's a whole condominium complex on the left. The pink buildings?
how far away is that?
half a mile.
Yeah. And then.
Is that, do they access the roadway through Tropical Trail, or do they have to go around in order to connect to it?
No, they go right in, because there's a little gate in this.
Is that right, Aaron, to the best of your knowledge?
Just give me one sec, I'm pulling up the maps.
Commissioners, there is a multifamily development known as Island Cove condo that is just immediately north of Merritt Avenue, that is on the west side of North Tropical Trail.
Okay.
So if you think of where Edgewood Junior High School or Junior Senior High School is, and the elementary school there, Mila, that road is Merritt Avenue, and if you go on to the west on that road, you'll come to North Tropical Trail, and the condo is right there at that location. It's pretty far south of the location that we're talking about.
Okay, I appreciate it.
It's a half a mile. It's really not far, but that's okay.
And I guess the other concern I have, I mean, obviously the septic, or the potential of having to have septic if you're not able to connect the sewer, because I'm kind of getting conflicting messages from what you all apparently were told and staff now. Having 3 of them right on that canal, it really does concern me, whether they're high efficiency or not, to have them in that proximity. I would feel a lot warmer about this, knowing that you could connect the septic and knowing that you would connect the septic. I'm sorry, sewer. Yeah. Like I said, it's been a long meeting so far.
Our house is actually one of their study zones. I mean, it's from that big map they do. I mean, we actually fall within the group that they'll give money to do it. I mean, I just found all this out today, sending me the application. I'm
I mean,
like,
if that's something that's down the road, you know, obviously when that comes into play, then that certainly might change things. But if that's not the condition now, and I've unfortunately, fortunately, or otherwise, I've got to rely on staff. And if you heard that from staff, but staff is now telling me something different.
Still, we've talked to sewage and septic and found that there's plenty of options for septic, and obviously a site plan has to be done before any determination or
Is
permits
there a
could be given, so.
safe option for septic there with the upgraded systems?
The spacing, the space that's available for a septic system is going to be very challenging. I haven't laid it out and looked at it, but I can tell you that the setback requirements from open water, whether there's a seawall there or just a natural shoreline, are significant. I believe there was like 75 feet. And maybe 100 feet now. I can't remember. I haven't done one of these in a while, but but they're pretty significant. To deviate from that requires a variance from state code or Florida Administrative Code, and so it's going to be a big challenge to get.
But if it can't be done, it wouldn't move forward anyhow, correct?
Well, they could seek a variance from the state. I don't know if they could get it or not.
But they would
And
still need site plan approval here.
They would, to go with a site plan, that's correct. If they
Okay.
were going to go with a small subdivision, then that would be not a site plan, but it would be a subdivision plan. And there's no question they could arrange their driveways to where they could be shared driveways, but they'd have to configure the geometry of their lots to comply with the code. And and in this case, it seems as though they might have to have a variance from the Board of Adjustments regarding the layout of that subdivision, given that geometry requirement, because they're a little bit short of the required width on the frontage on Tropical Trail.
Let me ask you.
It seems like a lot of these questions could have been handled before the meeting. I mean, if we are so unknowing of what's happening here, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of confusion. I had this conversation actually during the briefing over some of these items, and I was hoping that between the time I was briefed on this and now there may have been other conversations that would have clarified this for staff. But apparently that's not taken place. So regardless, I have a few concerns about it. As far as, just to address a couple of them, as far as the issue with not being able to pay off the mortgage prior to being able to do this, and that voting against going the flag lot route, it just concerns me that you're looking at building 3 separate houses that are going to, even putting the seawall aside, that are going to be at least 3-bedroom apiece, that are going to be certainly a sizable amount of money to construct. Even 1 or 2 of them would be a decent amount of money to put into that. But you have the money to do that, but not to pay off the mortgage and go the flag lot route.
No, sir, that's not what we're saying.
I just don't understand
And
that.
this is an eventuality. I mean, first we have to have the ability to do anything up there. Now, we wouldn't even be here if RU19 was considered, the current was considered compatible with the Res 4, but after our initial meetings with planning and zoning, they said, you can't do anything with RU19. You're going to have to change it to something. The best thing that planning and zoning came up with for us to change it to was RU24. That's the only reason we're here.
Well, let me ask you, in terms of, when you say an eventuality, what do you mean by that?
Well, my mother-in-law, like she said, she's at 84. She's getting to the age where she would like to put a house up there.
This was her idea to
It was
begin
her
with.
idea to begin with, so not ours. So we said, okay, great, what do we got to do first? And that was the first step, was to go to planning and zoning. And they said, well, the first thing you got to do is change to something other than RU19 because you can't do anything with RU19. I said, I didn't understand why that is, but that's what they told me. And they said the best thing you can go to is RU24. They mentioned flag lots. We talked about that, but then our neighbors had concerns about a flag lot because then we could subdivide it and potentially sell it to someone else who would or could turn it into a rental and rent it to who knows what, which we don't want to drive by either. That's my piece of property. It's 3 acres. I moved there and pay the taxes on that sucker for a reason. It's because I love it. And I don't want anything to happen to it other than that. And I'd love to have my family there with me.
Let me
That's
ask
all there is to it.
From Ms. Bentley, in terms of anything we can do at present, is there anything we can do tonight to require that it not be rented out, that whatever structures are put up? Is there any option whatsoever that you're aware of that could work?
Not without significant enforcement problems. I mean, you'd have
That's
to
an
track
issue.
it.
There are at least 3 houses for rent on the street next to us.
That they
Now,
live on.
I'm not even interested in renting. I'm just saying, it's not even against the character of
Sure, no,
the
and
road. I mean, it's,
In terms of having single-family homes that are that are of a certain size and renting, or single-family homes on lots of a certain size and renting them, that's one thing, but I think we're talking about something a little different in terms of changing the zoning, putting up additional structures, and then potentially renting them out. So, the first thing I heard was it was for your mother-in-law.
It is.
And then I heard there were additional structures that are now being requested for other family members, and now I'm hearing, well, it's not really inconsistent to rent it. I've got too many concerns with respect to this, and obviously it's democracy up here. My colleagues are free to disagree, and if that's the way it goes, that's the way it goes. But I have too many concerns, both with respect to the septic issue, with respect to the character of the area. Obviously, whether it's half a mile or farther away, it's certainly not within a reasonable proximity in my mind for that little swath of Merritt Island. I would move to deny it.
Commissioner Pritchett?
Are they wanting to build 5 or 4? I'm sorry, I got a little confused with today's. 3 more, so a total of 4.
Yeah, our house.
Okay.
And then the 3.
On the zoning it is now, could they put more houses on that? The RU19?
On the zoning they have now, on the parcel that they have in the front, let me clarify, they have split zoning on their property. They cannot do anything with the portion zoned RU19 because the zoning classification is inconsistent with the comp plan. The comp plan was changed from Res 15 to Res 4. Had the RU19 portion been a separate lot, it would retain pre-existing rights under the current zoning, this is exactly what I was talking about in Sotsmore, where they would retain the rights they previously had, separate from what the comp plan did, had the lot been in existence when the comp plan change was made. But here's where we turn the corner towards the future that the comp plan is trying to define. And when they want to make a new lot, it has to come into compliance with the comp plan. And that's where they would need a different zoning classification to be able to develop a single-family home there or have a binding development plan that limits the property to 1 lot. But, yeah.
I do struggle with changing from single-family zone and where you could do that and maybe put houses on and go into multi. But I guess that could be taken care of if you did a binding development. I do struggle with a property that's only 2.92 acres and having 4 septic tanks. So that's, I know, but hold on, let me finish. And I know it says sewers going on, but that would have to be part of the BDP too. And here's something else too, you guys have a mortgage of this whole property. You're going to have to go and talk your mortgage company into letting you split this up. Are you putting houses on the property for cash, or are there going to be another mortges?
No. Yeah.
So they're going on for cash. So I think your mortgage company might be fine with you doing that other route. I almost don't think you're ready for where you're at right now in this. I really don't think there's been enough work with this. I think just from looking at this, I know what you think you want to do, but I don't think it's established enough to have it there. And especially, I don't even know if the sewer line's going in there. And I think that was going to have to be something, I think I'm hearing Commissioner Lober say too, and I think that might be something to know that you're going to be able to hook up to that. Here's the thing too, if we're doing the lagoon thing, existing properties hooking up, but guys, I think new construction need to pay to hook up to the sewer lines if we have them in there. I don't want to abuse the lagoon funds on that either.
Those three houses that just went in, they just subdivided on Lucas, paid to hook up to the sewer.
Yeah. So I don't know, those are the things we're going to have to consider, but I hear Commissioner Lober's struggle. So I think unless he wants to table it, I'm going to have to agree with him tonight to deny it because...
I'm happy to table it if you all can provide more info, but...
Just one thing, I mean, there are far more than 4 septic tanks on the 2.92 acres on the other side of that canal.
On the canal right now
There's
with whatever...
13.
Sir, I know, but where the commissioners have been in the past in this area, and I don't know where... I think I'm hearing him very strongly concerned about the lagoon. The commissioner before too quit putting septic tanks on such a small parcel. So I don't know. I'd have to hear from the commissioner on that. He knows the area much more than I do. But I'm hearing his concern. I've got the same concerns. And I typically, he knows what's going on, but I kind of agree with him on these hesitations.
My biggest single concern is the septic sewer issue. That's my biggest single concern with it. And if I knew that they had to connect to sewer, or even that it's a realistic possibility where they're not going to have to go bore under a road to get to it, I would feel a lot better, whether it's approving this in full or giving him perhaps the ability to add 2 instead of 3. You know, I'd be more flexible with it, but I just, without knowing that you all can connect to sewer and having something to substantiate that.
So I have to
And
bring
you
a
can-
letter from them that
And you
says we can
can
connect?
And you can do 4 houses on a single-family zoning. There is a way to do that. So this multifamily too is kind of throwing me
I mean,
for a hitch.
I would love to give them
That
any
is the way
variance.
RU24.
I mean, if we could give them
According
some
to
kind of
Dell.
a variance that would allow them to maintain the existing zoning but put up an additional structure or 2, I could live with that easily. But when we're talking about 3 structures and changing the zoning and not knowing whether they're going to connect to sewer or septic, there are just so many variables that
messy.
cause me to kind of cringe a little bit if we had some of those firmed down. And I'm happy to work with staff to do some homework so that it's not all on you to see whether or not you're even able to connect to sewer. That's not a problem, and I'm happy to revisit it, but if I have to vote on it tonight, I'm not going to vote in a way that you're going to be happy with.
Aaron?
I told him he's not listening.
Staff met with the applicants and sought out that meeting to present the option of sewer. And we had a plan in hand that showed septic on the property, which you have before you today. The staff was never apprised of any intention to hook. We were actually told that that would be impossible. So, we...
Just found out today.
Right, but, so
Literally just
perhaps
found
they would
out
like it
today.
to be tabled, but we definitely did ask if that was something they were interested in and brought up the maps and showed the proximity, and it's 300 feet away.
Because it would be cost prohibitive to
300
bore
feet
under
away.
the road and anything else.
It's across the road. I mean, of course, that's a huge cost to get under the road, which is why the other people on that side of the road don't have it yet, but...
I mean, I don't want to do anything impulsively and nuke what you all are trying to do tonight. If you're able to let us do a little more recon on it, but...
Commissioner Tobias? He's been trying to talk for a while.
I'm sorry.
Just another option here, so we don't go through this again. We have a process that I think for planning and zoning, and I know that you guys have gone through planning and zoning, but the last time you went through planning and zoning I have here was January of this year, in which there was a binding development plan of a single family unit. And clearly that's not what your interest is. So I think we've stated for the record over and over and over again what our many issues are. I think probably planning and zoning will have a good idea, and maybe they could come, make another suggestion to us if it was, instead of us unilaterally denying you, instead of us going through this again, I would, this isn't my district, but I think it would be much better to have it dealt with at least a little bit tighter
That
in
makes sense.
planning and zoning than bring it back here in 2 weeks or
I'm
something
going to
like
withdraw
that.
the prior motion, move to send it to P&Z.
We'll need some dates, because it's an advertised item. It'll have to come back to date certain. So we'll need to know the date of P and Z.
How long do you think, before we set a date, how long do you think this would take us? I mean, you've heard the issues. Well,
I mean, I already found out I can connect to sewer.
Okay,
But
so
I
that-
have to
that-
verify that. I mean, I have to.
that's a
I can hear
great
that-
piece of information that would go into the binding development plan, but that, again, that would be something that
So
would.
you want us to invest in a binding development plan and get a site plan before we even know if
No,
you're going
I
to
don't
grant
Not
us?
the site plan, that's
No
not what
one's
we're
asking
asking.
that.
That's the expense, I think.
No.
But what you're asking for is way out of the norm. So even if I want to find a way to allow you to have your family live with you, because I think that's the greatest thing ever. I mean, we've bought quarter-acre lots where I live in the hopes that my children can build, and my one has already claimed which one he wants. So I feel you. But we want to make sure we do this right. We want to make sure we have the least amount of impact. We want to make sure it's really tight and with a nice bow on top.
Yeah, I promise, I'm not trying to be mean for the sake of being mean.
All right.
I'm really
I
not.
understand.
Well, I guess I just really want to know exactly what you want, because I don't want to, I feel like we keep on wasting your time, and heaven knows we've all had a long night.
I
So-
think part of it is, it would be nice to have P&Z evaluate 3 particular additional structures being added on, that being one. If there's ambiguity as to whether they were told that one was the goal or more than one, I think that would be nice. It would also be nice to have some certainty as to whether sewer is available, and if so, whether it's realistically possible to connect to it, and what it would run to connect to it, and what funds are available to facilitate that connection.
Sure. I mean, one of the times I met with P&Z, they brought the site plan person in and said, you won't need a site plan with the RU24. And so, you know, that's changing on us too as well.
That's all right, come on.
So,
So
I mean,
So let's, I guess, Aaron, do you have the P and Z dates?
Yes, I do. The next P and Z date is May 30th, which is, or May 2nd. There's a May 2nd meeting, excuse me, forgive me, that's the commission dates. There's an April 8th meeting, which is just 4 days from now, which is fairly unreasonable, and a May 6th meeting. And then that would allow them to come back to you all on May 30th, which would bring them before the break.
30th.
Okay, so I'd move to set it to May 30th if that works for you all. Or, I'm sorry, May 6th for P and Z, and then May 30th to come back here. Planning and zoning.
planning and zoning. That's the other hearing, you mean?
It's the other group of people that hash this out.
And then they'll give us a recommendation with respect to it. It's going to be a lot easier to act on that.
Okay. I mean,
See you next week.
we kind of went through that.
And
Right.
I'll
Yeah, but your
ask-
plan is completely changed.
But, you know, these,
I got you.
the one thing that staff would ask is that if there are commitments that are going to be agreed to in a binding development plan and a mortgage company is not going to agree to them, it all falls apart no matter what you do. So
Right.
just, you know,
Right,
we need to have
that's-
some education about those obligations.
We were actually told the commission was to decide on if RU24 is compatible with Res 4, and that's what we thought this entire meeting was about.
And see, and it would be compatible with the binding development plan, which you can't
Okay.
have without the approval of your mortgage company. So
Okay.
that, you know,
Which, if
if
we
you were
couldn't
doing
get,
something really easy, then
Yeah.
we wouldn't be, you wouldn't even, yeah.
I think we still need a second and a vote on it.
A second?
Did you get the motion, guys? Okay.
Yeah.
Second by Commissioner Pritchett. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
And I'll see if she'll be nice enough to take you guys a little earlier in the schedule next time,
yeah,
maybe.
okay, great. Appreciate that.
Nobody asked, just so we're clear, because I would have.
No, I know.
Next time I'll
We
ask
did-
her and see if
Next
she'll
time
do
your
it.
commissioner might want to ask.
All
I'll
right.
ask.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
y'all.
Moving on, I have no public comment cards, so we'll go to board reports. Mr. Vate?
I have no report.
Ms. Bentley?
No report?
Commissioner Pritchett?
No report.
Commissioner Lober?
You know what? No report for now. I'll save it for next meeting.
Thank God. Commissioner Tobias?
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's been some discussion on the county option regarding some property on NASA Boulevard and Wickham Road. And through these discussions, largely led by staff, it's become clear to me that there's no way to determine the true value of this property without going through an RFP process. While a certain and singular developer has proposed a plan that would be potentially beneficial to the county, I would include it in the RFP, the same requirements to improve that property as that is being suggested. After speaking with Mr. Denninghoff, it's my understanding that there's no imminent danger in the county waiting to have this work performed. So I'd like to make a motion to direct staff to bring back board options with this property, which would include the option to issue an RFP. That would be the motion, Madam Chair.
I'll second it for discussion.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Tobias, second by Commissioner Lober. Commissioner Lober?
I actually had a meeting with some of the folks involved with this. We may have even had a couple meetings, come to think of it. In any event, looking at that property and looking at the development that's taken place even since their most recent document that addresses the valuation of the property, I think the area is more valuable than it was when it was last studied. Additionally, I think one of the other things to keep in mind, and none of this will be news to the folks proposing this project, we didn't approach them to suggest that we swap land. They approached us. We don't know what we don't know. And what I mean by that, what my concern is there may be unforeseen or unforeseeable issues that we encounter. And I said, look, I'm not trying to stifle anyone's plans here, but there needs to be some money, not for us to profit from, even though they may view it that way, but to buffer any unforeseen or unforeseeable expenses that we incur by trying to do the right thing and trying to help you all out. That particular piece of property at that particular intersection, I don't think you need to be a real estate mogul to know that that is a tremendously valuable piece of property. It does concern me that, based on what I understand from my conversations with the folks involved, that there is such a slim margin that they really are either unwilling or unable to bring any amount of money to the table beyond the straight swap. And I've had the discussions with them. I've certainly sat down and provided them the opportunity to go over this at whatever length they'd like. I spoke with their attorney as well following the most recent discussion, and I just have concerns that we don't know what's going to be involved and what may come up, and for that reason, it concerns me. It really does concern me. And I'm not saying that we should go behind their back or, basically profit from the suggestion and try to work out our own deal with the city of Melbourne, which we could do. But I think that your motion at least puts us in a better position of doing additional due diligence to determine the proper value to assign to that particular piece of land.
Commissioner Pritchett?
Commissioner Tobias, you threw me off guard with this just a little bit. Let me ask you a question. Because up until you guys have this conversation, I kind of like the switch out. So if we go forward with your motion right now and we come back with this, if we do like this project still, is that going to hinder us being able to do this if it ends up being a good thing? I haven't had any time to think through what you just proposed.
So, as you do to us very often, effectively, mind you.
Yeah, but I do it with a southern accent.
Yes, yeah, and you do it so much more diplomatically.
Okay.
So yes,
But
so
you have a
I
hearing
see
on.
your point. So your thought is, and I've worked through this, and I think Commissioner Lober touched on it, that we are. This is not requiring an RFP. Let me be very clear. This is just asking to bring back various options, one of which would be an RFP. But let's assume that we do RFP, and for one reason there's only a single source. Then does that put us in a poor negotiating position, one of which we are in worse at that point than this juncture? That would be a fair comment if the development that was currently taking place in that area with a new interchange, we have an asset that is increasing in value. So I think the longer that we hold on to this, the better position the county taxpayers are in. We're in no obligation to do this. This is functioning as a drainage ditch at minimal cost to taxpayers. Whether we do this, tomorrow, whether we do this 2 years, we're in good shape. It's my opinion that we're holding the better cards in this one, and for us to single source it as this group wants, it's outside of my understanding, and I think the only way we do get an understanding is bring us back some options of folks that do know. So I think as time goes, our position gets better and better and better, and the fact that these individuals aren't interested in us going out with an RFP is sending up a red flag that, again, I don't know, but the market does. So that's all I'm asking. I'm not even asking for an RFP. I'm just asking for options, including an RFP.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I would like to weigh in on this issue also. I have mixed feelings. I certainly don't have any disagreement with giving the county options. But one side of the coin that I see is that we have a piece of property there that really has no worth at all as it doesn't bring any taxes in. It's a drainage ditch. So these guys are willing to swap out land for that, and then it would become a very valuable commodity to the county in that there would be tremendous taxes that are gained from it. So that's my 2 cents. I don't know where Commissioner Tobias is going with this, other than he's trying to get the county in a better position, I guess.
Commissioner Tobias?
Thank you. And Commissioner Smith brings up a very good point. I just do not have the knowledge to know what they're offering. I believe what they're offering is a good deal to the county and to the taxpayers. However, what I don't know is it the best deal. And I think that's what our obligation is. Would we be in a better position? Would we go through with that single source? Commissioner Smith, absolutely we would. I think staff would agree with that. However, what they cannot answer is is there a better position? Would we derive more resources? Should we go a different route with a different developer? So that's all. I didn't mean to impugn, this individual or these groups that wanted to do this swap, because what they're offering is very good. I just want to make sure for the county taxpayers that we're not doing very good, we're doing the best. And that's what, this motion would do.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, no more discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right, Commissioner Smith? Any commissioner?
No report.
And I have no report, so with that, at 9:06, meeting adjourned.
The opinions expressed by any member of the public during any period of public comment do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, or the program sponsor, and are solely those of the presenter. The Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, and the program sponsor hereby expressly disclaim any and all responsibility or liability for any defamatory or slanderous statements expressed by any member of the public during any such period.